Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my Endless Diary Tales channel? Thank you so much. After being reborn in 1987, I decided this time to avoid every single encounter with Ethan Gray. When he said he wouldn't come home for the holidays, I packed my bags and returned to the village alone. When he helped Olivia Lane rent a house next door, I moved out. When he decided to stay on as a lecturer at the university, I applied to a technical university in the Northwest. In my previous life, even our children urged me to divorce him just so that after I passed away, he and his so-called soulmate could be buried together. As I held the acceptance letter in my hand, I nearly cried. No one knew I had been reborn. At the last moment, I changed my college application to the Northwest Technical University. Even my teacher was surprised. "Didn't you say your fiancé was staying at the university? How will he wait for you if you go so far away for school?" When Ethan Gray's name came up, the image of his tall and confident figure as a young man appeared in my mind. Everyone thought I was reaching too high. Ethan was ambitious and good-looking, while I was only able to stand beside him because of our childhood betrothal. I smiled and confidently replied to my teacher, "Nowadays people believe in free love. That childhood engagement of ours is just an outdated relic of feudal traditions." Perhaps the teacher didn't expect me to be so self-aware. She patted my shoulder, her gaze full of approval. Leaving the school, I followed the crowd walking home. In my previous life, I didn't even go to college. A few days later, Ethan and I got married, and soon after, I had a child. My education ended there. Not long after staying at the university, Ethan moved to work elsewhere. From then on, we lived separate lives. His career soared, and wherever he went, Olivia Lane from the cultural troupe would follow with her daughter. Meanwhile, I was confined to my small corner of the world, caring for his aging parents, raising our children, and watching them grow more distant from me as they grew older. Step by step, they gravitated toward Ethan. I didn't even know my son eventually married Olivia's daughter until after the wedding had taken place. I only found out when an old friend showed me photos of the ceremony. In one picture, Ethan and Olivia stood beside the bride and groom, smiling tenderly as they offered tea. My son repeatedly urged me to divorce Ethan. "Mom, Dad has suffered his whole life. If it weren't for you, he'd have been with my mother-in-law long ago. Mom, you and Dad are incompatible in every way. Why can't you just let him go?" Even my daughter-in-law refused to meet me. But what could I do? I wasn't willing to let go. I wasn't willing to accept it. When Ethan's parents were bedridden, I cared for them day and night while he was out enjoying life with Olivia. When our son fell ill late at night, I ran barefoot for 5 miles to find a doctor while Ethan was teaching Olivia's daughter piano lessons and helping her with her homework. I sacrificed everything for this family, only to be told I didn't deserve to stay in it. My sacrifices left me haggard, my face lined with age. Even if I had to drag them down with me, I wouldn't let go, not in this life. As for what happens after my death, I won't care anymore. I won't have the strength to. I finally died after my son's last attempt to persuade me to divorce. He had been reading for a long time, but when I remained silent, he stormed out in frustration. He didn't know that as soon as the door closed, my heart attack began. I called out to him, but he didn't turn back. Instead, he slammed the door shut with all his strength. In that moment, I regretted everything. Why did I have him? Why did I sacrifice so much because of him? I had wasted my entire life. But luckily, I was reborn. I returned to the time before I married Ethan Gray. Everything could still be changed. When I got home, I hid the acceptance letter carefully and started cooking. This house, a 2-bedroom unit with a living room, was provided by Ethan's workplace. While waiting for the food to cook, I found the date on the calendar in the living room for when I would report to the university next month. I circled it with a red pen. I stared at the circled date with longing. It wouldn't be long now. Soon I would finally be free. Just as the food was ready, Ethan came home as expected. Olivia Lane and her daughter followed behind him. "I'm so sorry to intrude again, sister-in-law," Olivia said politely. Though there was a certain charm in her tone, she had pale skin, an oval face, and a red coat that added a hint of elegance to her presence. Her daughter, already familiar with this routine, cheered upon seeing the prepared meal, and quickly served 3 bowls of rice. One for herself, one for Ethan, and one for Olivia, none for me. When I walked out of the kitchen, the 3 of them were already sitting at the table, chatting and laughing as though they were a family. But as soon as they tasted the food, all 3 of them spat it out at the same time. "It's so salty," Olivia complained as Ethan rushed to the kitchen to prepare soup for her and her daughter. Unbeknownst to him, the soup turned out even saltier. In the end, Olivia left in tears, holding her daughter's hand. Before she walked out, she said to Ethan, "Sister-in-law probably doesn't welcome me. I won't come again." Ethan escorted them to the door. When he returned, he had a frown on his face. I ignored him and went back to the kitchen to make another dish. "You did that on purpose," Ethan said, seemingly confused. He then began explaining. "Her husband asked me to take care of them before he passed away. You're a good cook, and her daughter enjoys the food." When I remained silent, Ethan sighed and seemed to concede. "If you don't like it, I won't invite them over for meals anymore." The next day, after Ethan left, I took out a bundle and prepared to visit the village in a few days. Although we had a childhood betrayal, our families had exchanged tokens and birth charts. If I truly wanted to break off the engagement, it would need to be done in front of the village elders to avoid future complications. While packing, I came across the embroidered quilt covers and pillows I had secretly made over the years. After thinking for a moment, I stuffed them into a bag along with the new shoes I had made. I took the bundle to the pawn shop at the end of the street. The items I had spent years embroidering fetched me $30. Although it wasn't much, it was enough to cover some living expenses when I started university back home. I marked a big X on today's date on the calendar. Just 20 more days. In 20 days, I could leave this place and begin my new life. Ethan came home very late that evening. The dinner I had prepared was left untouched. "I already ate at school," Ethan said casually, as though offering an explanation. But the faint scent of white tea perfume lingering on him told me otherwise. He might have eaten, but it was undoubtedly with Olivia Lane and her daughter. Knowing I would have cooked for him at home, he chose to eat with them outside. Before returning, I quietly gathered the dishes and utensils, put them away, and went back to my room. My room was still filled with my old high school books and exam papers. The small space couldn't hold everything, so many of the books had been moved to the living room. I tied up the books in my room with rope, planning to clear the ones in the living room the next day when Ethan went out. Since I was leaving, it didn't feel right for me to leave anything behind. As I was packing, I heard a knock at the door. I knew it was Ethan. He was always polite to me, never stepping into my room without my permission. "What is it?" I asked, not wanting him to see me packing. There was silence outside for a moment before he finally said, "I'm writing the marriage report. How about setting the wedding date for the 9th of next month?" The 9th of next month. That was the exact day we were married in my previous life. I glanced at the bundle I had just tied up and replied calmly, "Marriage is a big decision. I'll go back to the village tomorrow to discuss it." There was another long silence outside before I heard his footsteps retreating. I let out a breath and leaned against the headboard. In truth, with his current standing, Ethan didn't need to inform my family to submit a marriage report. After my parents passed away when I was young, his family took me in because of our childhood betrothal. To everyone else, I was already considered part of the Gray family. The report was just a formality. Ethan was good-looking, had a stable job, and treated me well. Anyone could see that my heart was already his. I owed the Gray family, but I had spent my previous life repaying that debt. I owed them nothing anymore. In this life, I would choose my own path, a path without Ethan Gray. The next morning, I was surprised to find that Ethan had made breakfast, fried eggs and treasure porridge, my favorites. In the 3 years I've been living here, he had rarely done such things. I sat down quietly. The only sounds at the table was filled with the occasional clinking of the spoon against the bowl. "I'll take some time off and go back with you," Ethan suddenly said, breaking the silence. Startled, I instinctively shook my head. "I can drive you. It's not safe for you to travel alone," he added, frowning slightly as he looked at me. I was about to find an excuse to refuse when a little girl ran in from outside. "Godfather," she exclaimed, her hair tied up in two pink butterfly ribbons as she threw herself into Ethan's arms. Nah, why are you here? Where's your mom? Ethan asked, glancing toward the door. Instinctively, she carefully lifted her head from Ethan's embrace and glanced at me timidly. Mom said Auntie doesn't like her, so she didn't dare come. I quietly watched this little girl. In my previous life, she had become my daughter-in-law after marrying my son, but I had never met her in person. At just 3 years old, she already looked like a budding beauty. Even though she was 4 years older than my son still treated Olivia Lane and her daughter as if they were goddesses. Naturally, Ethan Gray quickly followed after her, saying that Olivia seemed unwell. Without leaving me a single word, he grabbed the child and hurried out the door. I sneered. Well, this worked out perfectly. I didn't need to come up with an excuse to travel back to the village alone anymore. Taking a pen, I stood in front of the calendar again and marked a big red X over today's date. 19 days left. I quickly finished packing the books in my room and brought out all my notes, textbooks, and exam papers from the living room. After bundling everything together, I sold it all and walked away with $13 in hand, ready to return to the village. Today's trip back was to formally break off my engagement with Ethan Gray. The Grays had treated me well, but convincing them to end the engagement wouldn't be too difficult. All I had to do was tell them that Ethan was on the verge of great success, and I wasn't a suitable match for him anymore. The village courtyard was quiet and somber. A small bonfire burned in the yard with mosquitoes buzzing around the flames. I sat by the mud wall, pressing down tobacco leaves with a wooden board and slicing them finely with a hatchet. Ethan's parents sat silently on the doorstep. After a long pause, they sighed deeply and began trying to persuade me. Emily, his father began, even if there's someone else in his life, you and he have an engagement. If he dares not to marry you, I'll deal with him myself. Your parents entrusted you to us before they passed away. How could we let you suffer? I didn't respond, remaining quiet as they spoke. When they realized I wouldn't budge, they exchanged a helpless glance. Finally, they said, "Why are you so stubborn? Fine, let's go find the village chief." I followed them silently. The village chief prepared a document to dissolve the engagement. The tokens exchanged during the betrothal were returned in front of several elderly witnesses. As we walked back home, I felt a sense of relief. I knew Ethan. My parents only wanted what was best for me. By all accounts, Ethan Gray was the ideal son-in-law. Handsome, successful, and well-regarded. Even his own parents couldn't understand why I was so insistent on breaking off the engagement. But I couldn't explain. I couldn't tell them how bitter my previous life had been, or that even the son I'd raised with love was actually Olivia's child, given to me only to complete their perfect family. Meanwhile, I'd spent my life utterly alone. The engagement was officially canceled. Ethan's father told me that I would always be like a daughter to their family. I didn't tell them about my plans to attend college in the Northwest, but I stayed with them for 2 weeks before leaving. When I was ready to go, Ethan's father walked me all the way to the village entrance, reminding me to always think of this place as home, and to come back and visit often. At the bus station in town, I discovered they had secretly given me $200. Tears streamed down my face when I returned home. The first thing I did was mark 15 more red X's on the calendar. 4 days left, just 4 days until I could leave. I was carrying my luggage to my room when I heard the door open. Ethan had just come home from work, with Olivia and Na following closely behind. "You're back," Ethan said, looking surprised to see me. Olivia gave me a polite nod. Then, as if it were the most natural thing in the world, turned and walked into my room. I hadn't even noticed her intention before she shut the door behind her. She had taken the liberty to move my belongings, scattering them around the living room. I turned to Ethan, who hesitated before explaining. "Oh, Snow Pavilion had a leaky roof after the rain a few days ago, so they'll be staying here temporarily. I saw you weren't home and there wasn't much in your room, so I let them use it for now." "So you thought it was fine to clear out my things and let someone else live in my room without asking me?" I asked coldly. Ethan paused, clearly at a loss for words. Then he added, "Right, just move your things into my room for now. For now, just stay in my room with me." Ethan said as he opened the door to his bedroom. By the way, where are all the books from your room? Why do you have so few things left? I glanced at the small bundle he casually placed on the bedside table, pressing my lips together. Well, after all, this was his house. Whatever he did wasn't really my concern. I don't need them anymore, I replied calmly. The college entrance exams are over, and keeping the books doesn't serve any purpose, so I sold them. Ethan frowned. Even if the exams are over, those books might still be useful in the future. Why sell them? I didn't respond. Seeing my silence, he shifted the topic. So what did my parents say? He asked, taking the bundle from my hands. I paused for a moment. I consulted someone, and they said the date isn't ideal. We'll have to pick another time, I replied. This was the excuse I had agreed on with his parents to delay the engagement. By the time I left, I planned. I had to explain everything to him. Ethan didn't seem suspicious at all, and simply nodded. I guess we'll have to find another day, he murmured before heading out. He mentioned he was going to make dinner, and told me to rest after my long trip. When I glanced at the desk by the window, I noticed the marriage report he had filled out. Only the section for the date remained blank. I stared at it for a moment, then looked away. As I was about to go help him, I overheard the faint sound of conversation outside. His low voice, her soft and coquettish tone, and the playful chatter of a child. I sat back down quietly. In truth, since our engagement had been officially dissolved, it was no longer appropriate for me to stay here, let alone share a room with him. But with only 4 days left before my departure, it wasn't practical to try and rent a place elsewhere. I decided that after dinner, I would sleep on the floor in the living room. Having spent the entire day traveling, I had intended to go to bed early, but Olivia, full of energy, began practicing dance routines in the living room. Dressed in a flowing white dress, she even brought out a mat to stretch her legs. To make matters worse, Na kept running in and out of Ethan's room, occasionally using his bed as a trampoline. Unable to take it anymore, I grabbed a basin and made an excuse to go fetch water. Once outside, I took a deep breath to calm myself. Emily, you're back. I thought you went to visit your in-laws, called Mrs. Hu, the neighbor from next door, as she walked over with her own basin. I did, but I just got back today, I replied. Mrs. Hu's husband worked as an accountant at the local mining company, and their family lived comfortably. She often shared treats like fried dumplings with me, and we got along well. She seemed to want to say something but hesitated, glancing behind me before pulling me a few steps closer to the well. When we reached the well, she tapped my forehead firmly with a look of frustration. You're so foolish, she said, exasperated. Do you know what kind of person she is? Even after her husband's death, she flaunts herself everywhere, and you bring her into your home. Emily, are you out of your mind? She shook her head and clicked her tongue. Ethan, he's the kind of man everyone wants. He's like fresh-baked bread, so tempting that even flies want a piece. And yet you let someone like that into your house. Have you lost your senses? Mrs. Hu's words were long-winded and filled with a mixture of concern and frustration. It was only then that I realized Ethan had told others it was my idea to bring Olivia Lane and her daughter back here. He claimed that I felt sorry for them, widowed and alone, and suggested he bring them to stay at our home after their house had been damaged. I laughed mockingly. Ethan was clearly just trying to avoid public criticism and used me as a shield. But since I was leaving soon, I didn't want to get into an argument about it now. I simply smiled and said nothing on my way back. Repeatedly urged me to kick such troublemakers out of the house as soon as possible, worried that I might feel too embarrassed. She even offered to help if needed. I knew she partly wanted to watch the drama unfold, but her intentions weren't entirely bad. When I returned home, the living room was empty. I grabbed some clothes and went to the bathroom, only to find many unfamiliar women's items scattered around. My own toiletries, including my jar of scented soap and towels, had been stuffed into a corner basin next to the trash can. In their place were 2 towels, one large and one small, as well as shampoo, hairbands, and other items. Oh, sister-in-law, Nina needs to use the bathroom. Could you step aside for a moment? I felt a deliberate shove as someone brushed past me, causing my head to knock against the door frame. Olivia had already stepped inside, holding Na as she helped the child relieve herself. When she finished, Olivia glanced back at me standing by the door and said in a soft voice, "Sister-in-law, could you please move? You're blocking the way." Though her voice was gentle, the smug and disdainful glint in her eyes was unmistakable. But I didn't budge. "Apologize," I said calmly. Olivia froze, seemingly surprised by my response. She hadn't expected me to stand my ground, but she had a clever daughter. Sensing the tension, Na suddenly charged at me, shoving me forcefully and bursting into tears. "You're bad. You're bad. You're bullying my mom," she cried loudly. Ethan came rushing out of his room, alarmed by the commotion. "What's going on? What happened?" he asked, immediately scooping Na into his arms. With tears welling up, Olivia said softly, "It's my fault. Na needed to go urgently, and I asked sister-in-law to let us use the bathroom. That's all." Ethan looked at me disapprovingly, but said nothing in front of Olivia. Instead, he gently comforted Na. Don't cry. How about we ask Auntie to apologize to you, okay?" When Na continued crying, he carried her back to the room, saying he'd get her some candy. Olivia cast me a triumphant glance before following them into Ethan's room. The sound of Na's wailing gradually subsided as I expressionlessly finished my shower and collected my belongings. By the time I returned to my room, Olivia and Na had left. A colorful box of candy sat on the nightstand, clearly prepared for children. Ethan stopped sorting through his things when he saw me come in. "Emily," he began, clearly intending to lecture me about not arguing with children and apologizing. Instead, I sat down without a word, took out a piece of paper, and pressed it against the spot on my head where I had hit the door frame. After wiping away the blood, I handed the paper to him. The bright red stain was impossible to miss. Ethan's words caught in his throat. His face turned an alternating shade of pale and flushed, visibly embarrassed and at a loss for words. "I'll sleep in the living room tonight," I said as I grabbed some bedding and opened the door. "Wait," Ethan said, pulling me back. "There's no need to sleep outside. You can stay in the room." He thought I was upset about what had happened earlier, gently tugging me back inside. "Nah, she's just a child, and Olivia didn't mean any harm. You're an adult. Don't stoop to a child's level. Guests are guests. I know you don't like Olivia, but she's had a hard life. Don't be petty," Ethan said. I let out a cold laugh. "So you brought her here and told everyone it was my idea?" Ethan's breathing hitched. He opened his mouth to speak but couldn't form a single word. I smiled. See, no matter how self-righteous his words sounded, the selfishness and ugliness of his actions were impossible to hide. Out of respect for his parents, I didn't want to ruin his career, but this was as far as I could go. That night, Ethan slept on a makeshift bed in the living room. The next morning, I got up early and packed all my belongings. My plan was to find a hotel nearby and return later to pick up the rest of my things. When I opened the door, I saw Ethan had already prepared breakfast. Na spotted me and huffed loudly, dragging the breakfast plates closer to herself and Olivia. Ethan came out of the kitchen holding a plate of fried eggs. Seeing me, he smiled awkwardly. "You're up. Come, I made fried eggs," he said, glancing at Na and Olivia's plates. His smile faltered. "Na, be a good girl and share with Auntie." I ignored them and walked straight out of the house. The only hotel nearby was just a street away. I rented the cheapest room. 3 days for $21. After paying the rent and deposit, I stopped by a breakfast stall to buy some steamed buns and fried dough sticks. When I returned home, I found my neatly packed bundle had been opened. My belongings were scattered all over the room. My acceptance letter was in Nina's hands. She had torn it open and was using it to make paper airplanes. A buzzing sound filled my head as I rushed forward. "What are you doing?" I snatched the letter from her hands. Startled, Na fell off the table, landing with a loud thud. Her cries were deafening, summoning Olivia from the other room. "What are you doing? How dare you bully Na?" Olivia shouted, pushing me aside and scooping up the child. I was trembling with rage as I carefully unfolded my acceptance letter, checking it for damage. "Bully her? Did you even see what she did? Who told you to touch my things? Get out." Olivia stood holding Na in her arms and glared at me coldly. "Don't forget you're not even married to Ethan yet." This house isn't yours to command. She carried Na toward the door but paused and turned back. Even if you do get married, you'll never beat me. With a loud bang, she slammed the door shut. Olivia's hostility toward me always surfaced when Ethan wasn't around. In the past, I used to feel inferior and timid. Olivia was beautiful, talented, and the star of the cultural troupe. I had always thought I couldn't compare to her. But after being given a second chance, I finally understood. Why did I need to compare myself to her? In Ethan's heart, Olivia would always come first. First, besides Ethan, didn't I have anything else? I could still go to college. I could contribute to the development of my country. I could broaden my horizons and gain new experiences. Staying trapped in this mire would only hold me back. After packing all my belongings, I marked another bold X on the calendar. With my bag on my back, I left for the hotel I had booked. When I was first reborn, I did consider going to Olivia Land's workplace to confront her. After all, she had ruined my previous life. I thought causing a scene might bring me some relief, but what would that accomplish? As long as Ethan Gray remained in her corner, even if Olivia lost her job, he would take care of her. It wouldn't cause her any significant loss. As long as I still cared about the Grays' kindness in raising me, and didn't want to destroy Ethan's career, Olivia would remain untouchable. At the end of the day, it came down to the man himself. If his heart wasn't in the right place, no one could change it. Olivia's late husband had many comrades in arms, yet none of them took care of her and her daughter the way Ethan did as Nina's godfather. So I let out a bitter laugh and moved on. Once I reached the hotel, I unpacked a little, and took out some stationery to write Ethan a letter. Setting aside his infidelity and his entanglement with Olivia throughout his life, I couldn't ignore the 3 years I had spent here in high school. He had provided for me, fed me, and even helped me with my studies at times. For those reasons alone, I felt obligated to explain things clearly in the letter. I wrote that I had already returned to the village and ended our engagement. I also mentioned that I had been admitted to another university, and that our paths would diverge from now on. We would never meet again. As I was halfway through the letter, I heard a knock at the door. Thinking it was the hotel staff, I opened it only to find Ethan standing outside. He looked exhausted, as if he had been running around all day. When he saw me, he let out a deep breath. "Finally, I found you. I'm so relieved you're okay," he said. I stood silently, expecting him to start lecturing me. Instead, he said, "All right, don't be mad anymore. Come back home with me." He stepped inside uninvited and began gathering my belongings. I quickly covered the half-written letter with a book, but his gaze fell on a silver bracelet in my bag. "Why is this bracelet here?" he asked, his expression shifting as he picked it up. I froze, annoyed at myself for not putting it away earlier. That afternoon, when Na was rummaging through my things, a bell had fallen off, and I had fixed it. The bracelet was one of the tokens from our childhood betrayal. I had taken it back last time when I visited the village. Ethan's expression turned strange as he examined it. "This bracelet, shouldn't it be with my mom?" he asked. I scrambled to think of an explanation, but before I could respond, he chuckled. "I get it. My mom must have sent it with you to give to me," he said, placing the bracelet back into my bag. "Just keep it for now," he continued. "We'll be getting married soon anyway. What's mine is yours, so you might as well hold on to it." I let out a quiet sigh of relief, though my hand remained firmly on my back. Ethan frowned. "Are you still upset?" "Nah, it was wrong, but she's just a child. Stop making such a big deal out of it. Do you know how worried Olivia was when you ran off? She went out alone at night to look for you and scraped her knee so badly that she's still lying at home. I just don't get it. Na has always been such a good child, but whenever you're around, you two always seem to clash," Ethan said, clearly agitated. I stared at him calmly, saying nothing, and he hesitated. His mouth opened as if to continue, but no words came out. I suddenly laughed. "Do you know what happened this afternoon? Your precious daughter went through my belongings. I told her to stop, but Olivia said I had no right to tell her that. She even told me that even if I married you, I could never compete with her." I watched as his expression darkened bit by bit. "What do you mean? My daughter? Na is my goddaughter," he said defensively. Ignoring him, I continued. You keep using the excuse of taking care of your late comrade's wife to justify being close to her. But if your comrade knew this was how you were taking care of his wife, do you think he'd rest easy in his grave? My mocking smile and sharp words shattered Ethan's self-delusions. His face turned pale, and he wavered as if he might collapse. After a long pause, he finally managed to say, "If you're not coming back with me, then stay here and reflect on your behavior. I'll come back for you in a few days." With that, he turned and left, his retreat almost a stumble. I watched him go, listening to his unsteady footsteps fade into the distance. Then, with an expressionless face, I closed the door behind him. How laughable to him. The mere fact that he was willing to file a marriage report and marry me was supposed to be a grand gesture, something I should be eternally grateful for. The next day, I went to see my teacher to collect my train ticket. She had pulled some strings to secure a reserved seat for me, worried I might not be able to get one on my own. She even arranged for some acquaintances in the Northwest to look out for me once I got there. I had lunch with her and spent the afternoon buying some local specialties to bring as gifts for my future college roommates. On my last night in town, I went to bed early. I thought I would have trouble sleeping, overwhelmed by thoughts of regret or anxiety. But to my surprise, I fell asleep almost immediately. The next morning, I handed the letter I had written to the hotel receptionist before checking out. Then, dragging my luggage behind me, I headed to the train station. The 2-day train journey was bumpy, and I could only sleep fitfully. When I finally arrived at the university, I let out a long breath of relief. After completing the enrollment process, I focused entirely on adjusting to my new surroundings. The academic schedule was rigorous, leaving me little time for anything else. I had missed the chance to attend college in my previous life, so I cherished this opportunity deeply. Aside from eating and sleeping, every moment was spent in class or the library. I received Ethan's first letter 3 months after the semester began. By then, I was not surprised that he had found me. A month earlier, my teacher had written to tell me that Ethan had visited her and learned that I was now in the Northwest. In his letter, Ethan said he did not agree to the engagement being announced. He wrote that in his heart, I was always his wife. He also claimed that there was nothing between him and Olivia, adding that he knew I disliked her and had already sent her away. He promised he would never see her again. He wrote that he was waiting for me to return. Enclosed with the letter was $100. I kept the letter but didn't respond, nor did I touch the money. University life was demanding. The coursework was heavy. Although I was among the top students and had received a scholarship, my monthly living expenses still felt overwhelming. I considered finding a part-time job to help ease the burden. When my teacher learned of my plan, she scolded me and began sending me $50 every month. In her letter, she explicitly stated that the money was a loan. At the end of the letter, she added a rare playful note. "Don't worry, your teacher husband knows about this and fully supports it." For some reason, tears suddenly streamed down my face. In my previous life, no matter how difficult things became, through anger, hatred, and regret, I never cried. This time, I was determined to be the same. Yet at that moment, the tears flowed freely. I cried my heart out, even startling my roommates, who rushed to comfort me. After that cathartic moment, I worked even harder. Ethan's letters arrived like clockwork, one every month, always accompanied by $100. In the last month of the semester, he wrote that he knew I wouldn't want to return, but he asked me to wait for him. He would come to spend the new year with me, but Ethan never came, and the letters stopped altogether. Later, I learned from my teacher that Ethan had married Olivia Lane. In her letter, my teacher explained the situation. The news had caused a scandal. Ethan had initially applied for a transfer to be near me, but someone reported him for inappropriate relationships. Probably the mistress, she guessed, afraid the scumbag would actually leave her to chase after you now that you were gone. Since I had already left, the authorities couldn't find anyone to confirm the claims. The matter was quietly resolved, but Olivia lost her job because of it. Left with no other options, Ethan married her. My teacher concluded the letter with a heartfelt comment. "At this moment, I feel incredibly fortunate for you. You're one of the lucky ones." I knew she was right. I was fortunate to have been reborn. fortunate to have avoided the quagmire of my past life. The next time I received a letter from Ethan was a year later. The first sentence was, "I'm sorry." He went on to explain that the person who had reported him was, in fact, Olivia herself. When she learned about his transfer application, she begged him to stay, but he refused. In desperation, she took a gamble and succeeded by orchestrating the scandal. She ensured that he would marry her. Ethan's letter also mentioned that he had finally understood what the dates circled on the calendar in the living room had meant. He had always thought they marked his anticipation of our wedding. I smiled, then burned all of his letters. As for the money he had sent, I forwarded all of it to my teacher, asking her to distribute it as she saw fit. 2 years later, before I graduated, I joined the country's Project 2011 initiative. I dedicated my life to serving my nation, leaving behind all thoughts of returning to Ethan. I shut myself away for 3 whole days. I knew I was truly at fault. I was wrong for letting my heart waver as I waited for Emily to grow up. Each time I helped Olivia, my feelings seemed to drift further away from where they should have been. Olivia's kindness and understanding, Nina's cheerful and lovable nature, they blinded me to the fact that I already had a fiancé. I ended up doing things that made me feel ashamed of myself. After 3 days of reflection, I realized one thing with absolute clarity. I couldn't live without Emily. I went to the hotel where she had been staying, but it was too late. She was gone. She had left me behind. I asked everyone I could, but no one knew where she had gone. It wasn't until I spoke with her teacher that I learned she had gone to the Northwest. My world crumbled. I thought of the silver bracelet I had seen in her bag, the one that shouldn't have been there, and rushed back home. But when I arrived, I was told that she had already annulled our engagement. Devastated, I returned to the house where we had lived together for 3 years. That night, I drank too much. Olivia slipped into my room. Later, when she saw my transfer application, she caused a scene. Her outburst cost her her job. Her family came to confront me, and I had no choice but to marry her. But after that, my friends began to distance themselves from me, one by one. I wrote letters to Emily, but she never replied. It was as though she had vanished from my world entirely. After my marriage to Olivia, she became overly possessive, constantly watching me and creating conflict over the smallest things. My parents didn't like her, and would often compare her unfavorably to Emily. Olivia changed. She became hysterical, paranoid, and unstable. Several times I had opportunities to transfer, but every time she caused such a fuss that the plans fell through. Each time, she accused me of wanting to abandon her, so I could go back to my former fiancé. I could only smile bitterly to myself. Emily would probably feel nothing but disgust if she saw me now. Olivia kept such a tight grip on me. Yet in Emily's eyes, I was nothing. Time went on. I watched my friends climb the ranks in their careers while I remained stuck in place. Olivia began to berate me, calling me useless. She even wanted to have another child, but no matter how hard we tried, she couldn't get pregnant. In the end, we only had Na. When Na grew up, she got married and had children of her own. But her husband turned out to be a violent, cheating gambler. Olivia cried every day because of Na's marital troubles. Yet when Na wanted a divorce, Olivia vehemently opposed it. After every argument Na had with her husband, Olivia would take out her frustration on me, blaming me for being incompetent, and for her regretting marrying me. Na blamed me too, saying it was my fault for not having a high enough position to support her. I had no words to defend myself. In the end, Na couldn't escape her marriage. She tried to run away but was caught and brought back. Her husband gave her a vicious beating as punishment. I was old and couldn't help much anymore. Later, Na took her own life, leaving behind a 6-year-old child. I never imagined that in our old age we would lose our daughter, and end up raising a 6-year-old grandchild. Looking at Nina's child, memories surfaced slowly, pulling me back to a time when there was someone else in my life. A young figure who once looked at me with nothing but love and devotion. I couldn't help but wonder if I hadn't gotten involved with Olivia back then. If I had married Emily instead, would things have turned out differently? But when exactly did I lose her? I couldn't even remember. As I looked back on my life, I realized how utterly meaningless it all felt.